Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Izuku clenched his fist, quelling the nerves and fear inside him as all his soreness and aches were overridden by the sheer adrenaline that was pumping in him right now. I saw you already getting thrashed, so I'll go a bit. Izuku used a burst of float to shoot forward, the woman stepping to the side just as his foot sailed through where her head had been. He spun with the movement, lashing out with a snap kick that she blocked with her forearm. She punched him in the stomach while he was suspended in the air, only for him to grab her fist just as she hit him, using it as a means of swinging into an axe kick. "Hey, you're not half bad." She easily stepped to the side of the kick and used his leg to slam him into the sand face first. He spat out a mouthful of the grains and slammed down on his heels, flying back and catching her forearm. She hissed at the kick to her arm and stepped back as he skidded to a stop a little ways away. "I guess I don't need to go that easy." Her grin was wide before she burst forward with a flying roundhouse kick. He brought up a crossguard to try and negate the effect, but still got rocketed back. He flipped off his back as her foot slammed where he'd been, the boy surging forward as his fist glowed slightly. He rocketed it forward, and she simply sidestepped it only for the glow to reveal itself to be a feint. His leg came around and impacted with her glove just in time as she blocked it. She gripped the limb and used it to slam him into the ground, the boy gasping in pain at the abrupt change. "I don't just kick, you know." Her heavy rabbit boot thudded onto his chest as he groaned, sprawled out on the sand as she grinned. Not bad for a kid that was quirkless a few months ago. His eyes snapped open, and his hand gripped her ankle before his leg snapped up in a straight 90-degree kick. She blocked it easily, only for the boy to punch her in the back of the knee while she'd been distracted. She grunted in pain as her sense of balance was thrown away, quickly flipping through the air and landing on her front with the boy sat atop her. "Hey, not bad," she murmured. Then her own feet came back in a mesmerizing show of flexibility, wrapping around his neck from behind and sending him tumbling. Still not good enough. She was now sat on him, both of his hands pinned in her one and her legs clamped down on his own. Hot breath mingled as he panted and huffed, giving a shaky smile in response to her large grin. "You done yet? Or do I need to get some rope?" He panted a bit harder and groaned as she pulled on his hands, stretching his sore limbs. "You win," he said in defeat, sighing in relief as she let go of his arms. She crossed her legs, firmly seated on his midsection as she grinned down at him. "Would you look at that? You're not a half-bad training buddy if I go easy." He spared her a dry glare. "I've been fighting for like 2 days." He squawked in indignation. "You're not the only one who watched hero fights. I recognize a few of those moves, you little copycat." He blushed slightly at being caught. "Honestly, I'm surprised you haven't started whining about me being heavy." He blinked at her in blatant confusion. "You're not really," he said simply. She raised a brow and then hopped down on his stomach, the boy groaning. "Hey, that's what I thought." She smirked, Izuku frowning at her words. "You're really not." He then picked her up and sat up in the same movement, the woman's eyes widening as he sat her down in his lap. "See?" She stared at him with wide eyes, getting goosebumps at the feeling of his warm breath on her neck and his hands on her hips. She could tell he didn't even think he was doing anything wrong. "Whatever, kid," she murmured, hopping off his lap and onto the sand as he blinked at her owlishly. She nearly rolled her eyes at his innocence as she huffed. "Plus ultra," Midoriya called as the mech suddenly buzzed before dashing into the thick forestry on the side of the beach. "Your robot's running away," she commented, leaning back on her hands as she enjoyed the cool air of the beach. Nah, he's just going home, Izuku said simply, rolling his shoulder with a wince. So, do anything cool today? Just some petty thugs, nothing to blow any steam off on. I guess that's why you did your best to fight all mech. She quirked a brow at the words. All mech? He blushed slightly but nodded. That's its name. She snorted, shaking her head as white tresses blew in the breeze. AKA called you right? Izuku thought for a moment before it clicked. Oh, Rata-san. Yes. Rumi nodded, hopping to her feet easily as Izuku slowly did the same. She's apparently got some plan to twist this whole thing. She shrugged as Izuku blinked at her. Don't look at me, she's staying quiet about it. Izuku hummed at her words, frowning in concentration. You know, it's kinda insulting that you held back against me. I didn't. Yeah, you did. She cut him off easily, eyes alight and lips a sharp smile. Don't worry, I'll just kick your ass twice as hard next time. There's another time? He asked hopefully, drawing rolled eyes from the woman, followed by a flick to the temple to Izuku. The green-haired boy yelped slightly, rubbing at the skin. You're a battle junkie for sure? Who gets told they're going to get their ass kicked and get excited? She had an amused smirk on her lips despite her words as Izuku clenched his fist. Even if it is just you beating me up, it helps get me stronger, he confessed, staring at the sand. She stared at him for several moments, looking at the green-eyed boy who seemed set on becoming stronger. She shook her head in exasperation as she flicked a bang to the side. You just don't know when to give up, do ya? He gave a small smile as his head rose. Nope, he admitted with a laugh, rubbing the back of his head as she rolled her eyes with a smile of her own. She stretched with a satisfied groan, cracking an eye open to see him watching her. I guess it's a good thing my partner likes what he sees. Izuku might as well have blushed to his roots as he looked anywhere but the woman in front of him. She almost couldn't connect the boy who'd had his hands on her hips not 5 minutes ago with the boy in front of her. She spotted him clenching his fist before meeting her gaze. Her eyes danced as he matched her gaze with his own, the woman's smirk growing at his new confidence. She crossed her arms, cocking her hip as she stared at him. Got something to say, kid? She could tell he was nearly shaking in his boots, but held strong. My name is Midoriya Izuku Miruko. The passive-aggressive statement made her smile grow stronger and broader. I know, she said simply, watching the boy nearly fumble for what to do. If you want me to call you something other than kid? She enunciated this by poking him in the shoulder. Impress me. I will. Rumi was nearly taken aback by the sheer confidence in his statement before giving a short laugh. See ya, kid. She coiled low before leaping away, leaping clear of the beach and into the forest. Izuku gave a shuddering breath as he fell forward, resting on his knees. So scary. Izuku barely held back a yawn as he walked towards the gates of UA, still tired from having stayed up so late. He tried his best to blink the sleep out of his eyes, reaching up to rub at his lids. Hey, that's Miruko's boyfriend. Izuku paled at the shout, and like moths to a flame, Izuku was entirely mobbed and surrounded not 20 feet from the UA gate. The boy clenched his fist tightly at the dozen cameras and microphones. Tell me, what's it like dating the number 5 hero? A woman asked, bringing the buzz of their questions to a halt as Izuku did his best to not break. The boy kept the image of how badly she would beat him up if he did bad right now. The response died on his lips as he remembered that her assistant apparently was going to do something. I don't want to answer, he said simply, trying to escape, only for him to get fully surrounded. He didn't want to just start shoving people out of the way, and simply stilled. "Are you saying that you don't like her?" Izuku whirled at the question, staring at the man who'd asked. "I didn't say that." "So you love her?" another asked as Izuku turned to this one. "I didn't say that either," he exclaimed. "So you're saying you hate her? Or are you simply not at that point in your relationship yet?" Izuku's mouth tried its best to work as he tried to think of a response that wouldn't end up with someone looking bad. To the boy's relief, a massive hand grabbed him by the backpack and plucked him out of the group of people. "All Might!" The reporters tried to chase after the #1 hero, only for the man to dive behind the security gate. "There you go, young Midoriya." The man set him down on the sidewalk as Izuku smiled up at his mentor. "Thanks, All Might," the boy said with a small smile. A loud buzz sounded as the gate they just came through slammed shut. "Ah, they triggered UA's barrier," All Might said. "Well, I'm off to a meeting, young Midoriya. You'd best hurry to class. Wouldn't want to get a bad start to the day." The man dashed away as Izuku turned down the sidewalk with a sigh of relief, the anxiety and pressure from the reporters ebbing away. He entered the main building easily and made up the stairs. "You're almost late, Midoriya." Izuku's head snaps to the side to see his teacher hobbling down the hall in a sleeping bag. "You are too, Aizawa-sensei?" the boy exclaims, blinking at him. "Why are you in a sleeping bag, sensei?" "I got tired," the man said simply. "If I get to class before you, you get an F for today." Izuku's eyes widened at the threat and picked up the pace. His eyes widened as his teacher matched him easily, hopping like a kangaroo, and Izuku started having to legitimately run to outmatch his teacher. He burst into the classroom, panting and huffing as his teacher hopped in from behind him, unaffected. "Get to your seat, Midoriya." The boy huffed and made his way there, sliding into his seat as he got his breathing under control. "Today is going to be one of the most drastic decisions you are going to make here at UA." The class stilled at his declaration as Aizawa's unnerving gaze swept over them all, the power to erase their quirks resting with but a thought. "Today you'll be—" The class's tension grew at the sheer weight behind Aizawa's tone. "Picking a class president." The entire class let out a breath as one at the revelation as the tension dissipated. "I don't care how you do it. It's up to you. Just come to a consensus without including me." The man promptly fell onto the floor while zipping his sleeping bag mostly shut. Ida took that as his cue and stood, facing the class. "We should do a vote to determine who our class president shall be," the boy declared. The class murmured agreement, and Ida pulled out a package of sticky notes, said notes getting passed around the class. "Who you voting for, Midoriya?" Kirishima asked from beside the boy. Izuku thought for a moment before nodding. "I'm going to vote for Ida-san." Kirishima quirked his head at the revelation. "Same?" Kaminari said from behind Izuku. "He seems like the type to enjoy the role. Besides, doesn't the class prez do all the work?" Realization dawned on Kirishima, and the three boys wrote the name, passing their notes forward. Ida started writing the tallies on the board, most having 1 or 0. Then there was 2 for Yaoyorozu, 3 for Ida, and 4 for Midoriya. "4 people voted for me?" Izuku asked with wide eyes. "It seems that Midoriya-san will be our class president," Ida said, noticeably upset. "Wait, Ida-san, who did you vote for?" Izuku questioned. "You, Midoriya-san." Izuku's mouth fell open. "If you'd voted for yourself, you would have got the role Ida," Kirishima remarked as the tall boy hung his head. "I realize this. However, Midoriya-san was the better candidate." Izuku shook his head. "I don't want to be class president. The role is yours, Ida-san, the green-haired boy said, resulting in the glasses-wearing teen snapping his head up. Nonsense! The people have spoken, and you are to be our class president, Midoriya-san. The people have spoken? Kirishima muttered. Ida-san, you fill the role better, Izuku replied, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm not good at keeping track of things like that. But Midoriya-san, you are the… Shitty Glasses, Deku, shut up, Bakugo barked. Shitty Glasses is president, problem solved. It seems you've come to a decision. Aizawa drawled, rising. Midoriya drops out, so Ida is your president, while Yaoyorozu is your vice. That's all for homeroom. The class groaned at the sight of Cementos coming to teach literature. Izuku sighed as he took out his notebook and textbook, while Cementos started handing out quiz papers. The boy skimmed over it, mind fuzzy, as he stared at the question. He held back a yawn and shook his head, trying to clear the cobwebs as he stared down at the short quiz. He bubbled in his questions steadily, finishing second in the class. The green-eyed boy tapped his pencil against his notebook, bored. Midoriya-san, Cementos chided softly, the boy pausing with a sheepish smile. The boy turned in his seat, back to the wall and notebook in his lap, as he thought. His head hit the wall with a dull thunk as his mind became filled with one image. Well, a series of the same image from different angles. The boy tried to shake the thoughts and glanced at the clock, noting there was still another 25 minutes in class. He barely repressed a groan at the sight. He started scratching in his notebook, seeming to all the world as though he was doodling to pass the boredom. Time passed slowly as the young teen continued sketching, whilst his classmates started finishing their own tests. Unknowingly, the boy had drawn for the almost entirety of those 25 minutes, and his drawing was actually finished. "Wow, that's insane!" Kirishima exclaimed, voice awed as he leaned over to look at the picture. Izuku snapped out of his reverie and looked up at the red-haired boy. "You're a real good drawer." Not really," Izuku said, with a sheepish smile, snapping the notebook shut. "Yeah? I guess you've just got that image in your head all the time now, huh?" Izuku blushed slightly, scratching his cheek. "Hey, I'd be the same way if I was dating someone like Miruko." Izuku let his lips stay shut as he tapped his pencil against his thigh. "Wait, you're not going to deny it?" Kirishima questioned, suddenly realizing Izuku had not thrown his usual fit at the words. "I mean, you guys don't believe me anyway." Kirishima narrowed his eyes and peered at the boy closer, Izuku pulling away. "Hey, Denki." The blonde perked up. "Is it just me, or does Midoriya seem more lovey-dovey?" "I'm not more—" "You're right." Izuku hung his head at the electric blonde's words. "Maybe a certain rabbit hero caused this." Izuku flushed slightly. "Oh, are we talking about Izuku's smoking girlfriend?" Sero popped into the conversation from over Kirishima's shoulder. Izuku gave the boy a narrowed glance. "Ah, he's defensive," Kirishima exclaimed with a point and a grin as Izuku receded slightly. "It's totally official." "It's not," Izuku snapped while waving his hands. "He lies," Mineta said gravely, once more seeming as though he were dictating someone's trial. Why would anyone lie about dating Miruko, though? Sato made his presence known with the question as Izuku groaned. She probably threatened him, God knows she could back it up. Kaminari remarked, resulting in understanding hums from the others. "Wait, have you sparred with her yet?" Izuku's mind flashed back to last night. He has. Look at that face. Izuku blinked, not aware that a grin had crept onto his face just thinking about the spar. "Why would he grin about getting beat up?" Sero asked, crossing his arms. because she wrapped her thighs around his head, and Minetta was cut off by the stare of green emerald, sharp enough to cut stone. The little pervert crawled behind Zero with a sheepish laugh. "Okay, I think Minetta went a bit far, but he was probably close to the mark," Kirishima commented, resting his chin on his fist. "Can't we just leave it?" Izuku whined, head thudding against the wall dully. "Nah." They all spoke in sync as Izuku let out another groan. "Have a nice lunch." Cementos's voice was like the light at the end of the tunnel as Izuku did his best to hurry out. Izuku sighed in relaxation, sitting at a quiet corner table as he slowly ate his lunch. "Hey, you're the dude dating Miruko, right?" He groaned very loudly at the question, turning his head to the trio standing before him. "I'll take that as a yes," the blonde said with a head scratch. "What is Miruko like up close? I always think that she's really nice on the inside, and you're kind of living proof of that, aren't you? Have you sparred with Miruko before? How high can she—" "I think we can let him finish swallowing at the very least, Nejia." The blue-haired girl blinked at the blonde's words. "Kay." The two slid into the booth across from him, while the other boy stayed standing. "Can I help you?" Izuku asked, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "You're at our usual table," the standing boy said. Izuku blanched at the boy, who seemed to practically be a carbon copy of his teacher. "Sorry, I'll leave you to your—" "No, stay," Nejia ordered, the boy pausing in getting up. "You can just shimmy to the side for Tamaki." Izuku did as such, and the dark-haired teen lowered himself into the now open side of the booth, slowly. "Amajiki Tamaki," the boy whispered as means of a greeting. "Midoriya Izuku. Nice to meet you, Amajiki-senpai." Izuku replied, not getting any sort of response from the dark-haired teen at the greeting. Izuku paused, not knowing if he'd insulted the other boy or not. "It's not you. Tamaki's just shy," the blonde said, that same smile still not having left his face. "Tagata Mirio, it's pretty awesome to meet one of our juniors." "Nice to meet you, Tagata-senpai." "Ah, Mirio's fine," he said with a head rub as Izuku's eyes widened at the scars and definition on Mirio's arm. "And I'm Hado Nejire. You can call me Nejire-chan or just Nej-chan for short," the bubbly girl said, smile never leaving her face. "If it's okay with you, I'd rather call you simply Nejire-senpai." She pouted at the words. Mirio-senpai, I'm sorry if you take this as rude, but could we spar sometime?" "Oh?" Mirio tilted his head as his smile grew even more. "Why me?" "Your scars." Izuku didn't miss a beat as his smile became prominent. "You won't win Tilda," Nejira sang. "Mirio's like the strongest at school. It's 'cause his quirk is so freaking annoying. Like, how do I defeat someone who—" A bread roll was promptly shoved in her mouth by said blonde. She didn't miss a beat and started eating the roll, seeming to forget entirely about what she was saying. "It's a shame that spars aren't allowed without faculty present," Mirio said with a sad sigh as Izuku gave a frown of disappointment of his own. "So, we'll do it really quick." Izuku's smile matched his seniors as Tamaki scoffed at them both. "Battle junkies." The dark-haired teen muttered as Izuku's ear twitched at the familiar title. "It's always fun, testing one's limits in a friendly spar, Tamaki." The blonde had risen and clapped his friend's shoulder easily as Izuku's eyes widened at the nonchalant burst of speed. "Come, Midoriya-kun. If we hurry, we can finish before—" The tall blonde was cut off by an alarm blaring, the quartet staring at the flashing red siren on the wall as students started scurrying like bugs out from under a rock. "What is that?" Izuku asked, noticing his seniors' faces gaining a look of seriousness. That's the intruder alarm. Someone's broken into UA, Mirio said with a frown. Come on, we need to leave. Everyone, please wait. The shout drew their attention, looking to the tall Iida boy clinging to a dangling light. The thrum of the cafeteria died down. I saw through the window. It was simply the reporters getting through. There is no need to panic. The tension was cut down as everyone exhaled a breath of relief at the news, looking out the tall windows and seeing a cameraman getting chased by 3 ectoplasms. Well, I guess it's not a villain attack. Mirio laughed as he spoke, rubbing the back of his head. Well, the procedure is to still report to your homeroom teacher, the blonde said with a shrug. Mirio-senpai? Mirio turned to Midoriya. I look forward to that spa. The brunette held out a fist as Mirio matched his smile. Sure thing, Midoriya-kun. The larger fist bumped with Midoriya's, and the 2 battle junkies grinned at one another. Izuku paused in his walk as he started leaving campus, the buzzing of his phone prominent as he took it from his bag. His eyes widened as he recognized the number and his memory came back to him. Good afternoon, Rata-san, he said upon answering the call. And a good afternoon to you, Midoriya-san. Now you are done with school for the day, correct? Her voice was proper, and Izuku felt anxiety well up in him. Yes. Good. I'm texting you an address. Please come within the next half hour. Okay, he said easily, not seeing an issue with the request. We await your arrival, Midoriya-san. He pulled away the phone and nearly blanched at the address that was in an entirely different prefecture. Without further preamble, the boy folded his jacket and slipped it into his back before rolling up his sleeves and getting one idea in mind. Run. 29 minutes later, Izuku showed up to the door, sweaty and panting. As he waited in the elevator of the same building, he remembered walking with Rumi too. It was the type where the elevator went directly to the suite, revealing a single door. He stepped out and knocked on the door, Rumi swinging it open on the second knock. Finally! It took you... You look terrible! She was blunt as usual as she looked at the sweaty boy. I ran, he huffed. She quirked a brow. Don't you have your rich adoptive father? He stared at her in silence for several moments before a whine came from the back of his throat. She barked a laugh and pulled him in by the collar. Good afternoon. Izuku chuckled sheepishly at the disturbed look from the red-haired woman. Go get a shower, kid, Rumi said simply, plopping down on the couch with a sigh, dressed in a simple sweater and jeans. Down the hall and to the right. Third door, Akamine said simply, pointing at the hall to the side as Izuku nodded with a shallow bow. The soft click of said door shutting sounded through the flat. Not a word, Rumi said with a glare as Akamina spared her an amused glance. I suppose it's a sheer coincidence that these accusations happen when it's a boy who oh so happens to be your type. Rumi growled at the woman, who let out a soft laugh. She then walked down the hall and disappeared. Midoriya-san, there's clothes here on the floor outside the door. Akamine then walked back into the main room. Did you just give him some of your clothes? Rumi asked with a quirked brow. No, yours. Rumi's brows knit together. I'm not going to give him mine. You're the one dating him. I'm not... The pro-hero trailed off in an indiscernible growl as she went back to playing a game on her phone. Just as I thought, the red-haired woman said easily. Silence reigned for the next few minutes before Izuku appeared, dressed in a pair of sweats and a hoodie that fit him rather well. Sorry about that. He apologized, pushing up the sleeves. It's no issue. It's actually rather impressive that you made it here in such good time considering the distance. Akamine answered, crossing one leg over the other before taking the phone out of Rumi's hand. Said woman grumbled before sitting up, something that made Akamine nod. Now, as I'm sure the both of you are aware, many people are now under the assumption that the both of you are in a relationship. Izuku scratched his cheek in embarrassment. Yeah, kinda why we're here, aka, Rumi muttered, crossing her arms. But, the woman continued with a narrowed look at the pro-hero, what I'm sure neither of you know is that Miruko's rating have tripled since that newspaper came out. What? The red-eyed woman snapped forward as she stared at the red-haired woman as Izuku stared with wide eyes. Yes, for 11 hours you had the highest ratings. With numbers like this, you would be able to become number 4. Rumi's foot was thumping. But isn't the ratings high because of the newspaper? Izuku asked with furrowed brows. Kid's right. That one newspaper won't last forever. Rumi agreed. Exactly. Hence why more need to be made. Both stared at her with matching looks of clueless on their faces. In other words, we could milk this while we can. Oh, Izuku murmured, cheeks tinted slightly as he craned his head and rubbed his neck. You still lost me, aka, Rumi admitted. These pictures, the woman pulled out the newspaper and gestured to the 3. We're able to skyrocket your ratings and nothing is even happening in them. Okay, Rumi said warily. Akamine sighed. Do I really need to spell this out? The woman muttered. She wants us to do that. More, Izuku supplied, still not looking up from the floor. No way, Rumi instantly said, leaning back and crossing her arms. I'm not turning my life into some sideshow. I'll get number 4 by becoming number 4. And how are you going to do that? Akamine's voice had grown sharp as she glared at the rabbit hero. By being me, not by prancing around in front of a camera. The woman said roughly. I will admit that you are on par with, if not better, than even Hawks in terms of ability. However, everyone above you is not relying on only their strength. Best Jeanist uses his fashion line as well as an agency. Hawks uses his agency, which has skyrocketed lately, as well as his natural flamboyance. Endeavor uses sheer power and his agency, which is the largest out of all heroes. You cannot climb the ranks without acquiescing in some form. No, the woman said stubbornly. The red-haired woman sighed at the reply, rubbing her forehead. You're being petulant, Akamine muttered. I'm being me, Rumi barked. If I get higher, I get higher. I'm not going to jump through some damn hoops for some stuck-up suits just to increase the number next to my name. I know I'm strong, so do the people. I don't need some damn title. The rabbit hero had stormed out of the room and down the hall after her rant, the door slamming loudly. Izuku sat there, almost afraid to breathe in the midst of the tension. Akamine leaned forward with a sigh, putting her head in her hands. Apologies, Midoriya-san. The woman sat up, looking the part of a manager of Miruko in her button-up clothes and pencil skirt. It's okay. I'm kind of getting used to her temper, he said with a small smile. Akamine gave a breathless laugh, nodding with a rueful smile. Rata-san, can I ask you something? Of course, Midoriya-san, the woman said, pulling the pin out that kept her bun in place. Why are you trying to have Miruko climb the ranks? She seems to not have a problem with being number 5. Akamine sighed at the question, running a hand through her hair. Rumi and I met when we were young, very young. She would always boast about becoming the first ever number 1 heroine. However, in the past 2 years, she's stagnated and given up hope on surpassing All Might. So I guess I'm trying to push her up the ranks because I know that's what the Rumi I grew up with would want. The woman sniffed. Excuse me. Izuku didn't say anything, the woman walking past him and to the bathroom he'd just showered in. Green eyes bore holes in the varnished floor as he thought. The boy gave a heavy breath before standing, fist clenched tight. The boy creeped down the hall before coming to a stop at the farthest door, one that had a small stuffed rabbit foot dangling on it. He took another deep breath before knocking twice. "Go home, kid," the voice called, and his mind told him to follow the subtle threat of the very strong heroine. But every other part of him stayed rooted. "No, thank you." Silence answered him before red eyes glared at him through the crack of the door. He gave what he felt was his best smile. "It wasn't a request," she muttered darkly. He bit back the fear in his chest and nodded. "I know." He scratched his head with a laugh. "I kind of want to know what your room looks like. I've seen All Might's, and his was not as cool as I thought it'd be. It had a really big bed, though." "If you're some type of Trojan horse, tell AKA I'm not budging." Izuku blinked. "Kay, can I see your room now?" Her brows knit as she glared at the slightly taller boy, dressed in some of her baggiest clothes. "Your face is suddenly much more punchable," she grumbled. He laughed at the words, scratching the back of his head. "That's kind of mean, you know," he said, still smiling as she still glared. She grunted before shutting the door in his face. A momentary frown came over his face as his mind tried to convince him to not aggravate the already annoyed woman. He took another deep breath, shaking his head a few times. He knocked again. A blindingly fast jab hit him in the gut before the door shut, the action so quick he had only seen a flash of Caramel's skin. He groaned, leaning against the door as the pain in his empty stomach cried. "That was real mean," he whined. "Good. You deserved it for being annoying," she called back. "Trojan horse, huh?" he murmured, not aware that she was sat on the other side of the door, waiting. She heard footsteps recede, and her face fell, her ears flopping sadly as her head ducked between her legs. The sound of the front door opening and shutting was the sole indicator as silence reigned. The clicking of heeled pumps sounded down the hall and stopped on the other side of the door. "I'm sure you're listening," Akamin's voice called as Rumi kept staring at the floor. "And I'm also sure that you're pitying yourself because you acted, once more, out of character." Her piece said. The woman's heels clicked away as Rumi stared at her floor. The woman sat there for a long while, simply staring at the white rug of her floor. It was maybe 15 minutes before the woman's silence was broken by knocking alongside the muffled sound of Akamin's voice. She sighed, not hungry for whatever food her friend had ordered. Her thoughts were brought to an abrupt halt at eerily familiar thudding from thick shoes. Her heart leapt up into her chest as they stopped at her door before knocking twice. The woman shot up. "I brought a Trojan horse." She cracked open the door to the sight of Izuku standing there with that same smile, 2 cups in hand, and the smug look of her friend down the hall. "Sorry it took so long. There was—" The boy yelped as he was pulled into the room, much to the amusement of the redhead in the hall. "It'll be good to have her back," the woman mused, heading back into the main room with a sigh. "Maybe I can take a holiday now." Izuku smiled at the woman, staring back with narrowed eyes over the brim of her cup as she sat on her bead. "What? Stop smiling at me like that. It's creeping me out." He frowned. "Rude," she rolled her eyes. "Don't be creepy. This is just how I imagined your room would look like." A soft white rug around the bed and fluffy bedding stood out like a sore thumb amongst the relatively bland room. An exercise bike sat in the corner, and he tried valiantly to keep the image of her working out of his head. "Think about my room often?" she quipped, grinning at the boy who continued to look around the room as a means of playing off his blush. "I feel like that's a trick question," he murmured as she barked out a laugh. Congrats. You saw the trap. Now, answer the question. He turned, catching her delighted grin at his suffering. Yes, he admitted, a drawn brow from the woman rising at his admission. Nice. Didn't think you had the balls to admit it. Her eyes narrowed as he didn't even react. You blush at certain things, but me saying you've got big balls doesn't get you pink. Well, I grew up with a friend who has a really foul mouth. I guess I'm just used to it. You saying my mouth's foul? She questioned, the boy gaping at her. She laughed. Yeah, it is. Now stop standing like a damn scarecrow and sit down. She slapped the foot of her bed. She scooted back and was seated near her pillows as he did so, both of them sitting with crossed legs. So, this your first time on a girl's bed? Yes, he admitted easily. Is this your first time with a boy on your bed? I have a brother, she said with a shrug. Is he older than you? Izuku asked, with no small amount of fear at the thought a male roomie defending their sister's honor after seeing the newspaper. Nah, he's like 2 years younger than you, I think. How do you not know your own brother's age? He asked, mirth lining his features and words as she rolled her eyes. It's not my fault. She did not elaborate on the matter, as Izuku had expected. He laughed as she scowled, not pouted, scowled. So, explain what led to you seeing All Might's bedroom. That's a long story, Izuku said, with a sheepish chuckle as he rubbed his neck. I've got time. Akamine jerked at the sound of knocking on her door, pausing her show as she tried to blink the awareness back into her eyes. She walked to the door and peered through the hole. A gaunt man in baggy clothes stood at her door. Can I help you? She asked, the door now swinging open as the man gave a shadow of a smile. Good evening. I'm Izuku's adoptive father. She made a noise of understanding. Of course, come in. He stepped in easily, and she repressed a shudder at the sheer state of his gauntness. I think they're still in... She trailed off while walking down the hall, the man following her. She cracked open the door to reveal Izuku sprawled asleep at the foot of the bed, while Rumi herself was sprawled in an even more chaotic manner across her pillows. Ah, I would let them sleep, the man said simply, walking away as Akamine nodded. The woman quickly snapped a picture before shutting the door. So, could you tell me more about Midoriya-san and yourself, Mr. Ah, Yagi Toshinori. Feel free to call me whichever, he said, patting down his wild hair to no effect. A pleasure, Yagi-san. Rata Akamine, you can call me AKA. That's the end of Chapter 3. I hope you enjoy the fanfic. Sorry about the strange uploading schedulers. I will try to get the next one out by next week. Please leave a fanfiction of any kind in the comments that you would like to see in a video.